God. Wrong one. There we go. All right. Hello and welcome to the Hedonistic Way at Midday show. I'm Renee Main and I'm really, so many things actually. Not one word could really capture how I'm feeling in this moment to have this beautiful woman on the show today. She's an artist that travels between many worlds, and I'm really curious to feel into her soul and explore those layers that make up this epic human, because she's fiercely bold, she's elusive, she's both complex and unpretentious. She's grace and absolutely enchanting, and her BS radar is set to friggin' extreme. But for all of her fierce as fuckness, there's a purity about her and innocence and vulnerability that just touches my heart. And she is so smart and intelligent. And when I was feeling into her, I get that feeling that she intimidates me a little bit, but in the most delicious way. Because she just evokes my curiosity and I can't help but lean into her thoughts, and she's completely unafraid to ruffle feathers, which is something I admire, and she is completely unapologetic to speak her truth. She dances in the realms of business and spirituality, music and sex magic. She's the founder of the Church of the Goddess and God Queen Records. I am so honoured to have the beautiful AlphaMama on the show today. Hello, welcome.
Thank you. I feel like so overwhelmed by the introduction. It's like listening to somebody else. I'm like, wow, what a bad bitch.
And it's you.
It's me.
But that's just, yours was one of the ones that I wrote, and I was like, oh, is that like, there was such words like ferocious and unpretentious, and I was like, they're words that I wouldn't really ever use, especially when I was describing someone's intellect, like, but I don't know, that's just how I feel. And there's just this softness about you, but there's also a friggin' fierceness, and so like you're so real and welcoming, and you're fully in your humility. So I want to ask you about, what is your dance between humility and that fuck off radar that is also strong within you?
Oh, it's such a great question. The first thing that comes to mind is my best friend. So we were in a partnership for a few years, and like when we met, it was like one of those like, holy shit, I know you from like eons ago, and then so we were in a relationship, then we separated, and now we're best friends. And his name's Atlas Talisman. He's had many name changes, but one of the things that he taught me early on when doing one of his workshops was this amazing quote that he says, and it's be humble enough to be great. And it stuck with me so much. And it's like, so much of our insecurity and our attempt to be humble means that we hide ourselves or we shrink ourselves because we're so afraid of being seen as egotistical or outshining other people or whatever it is. And so we never actually allow ourselves to just be the greatness of who we are. And for me, like just that quote, be humble enough to be great, like when somebody gives you an opportunity, and that's life, life is an opportunity, like step into yourself, step into who you are. And for me, like it is a dance because I'm just a fucking human being, and I deal with all the shit that human beings deal with. And I'm extremely sensitive, like ridiculously sensitive. But at the same time, I know that my sensitivity is like, that's where the greatness comes from. That's where like all of like the essence of who I am is there. And I'm sensitive because I do value myself. I treasure it. And so sometimes like there's a fire that comes out, and sometimes it's just like soft and it just, fucking melts away into a big puddle of emotion. And for me, the dance has been a welcoming home of all the ways that I express myself. You know, if it pisses people off or if it upsets people, like being able to welcome that home and not reject it and claim it fully and own it.
Yeah, and that's why the first thing that comes to my mind is that's there's a real, and I don't know, just the word dance keeps popping into my mind, is because it's one thing, like I feel like there's layers to it, like of that unfolding. And
Mm.
so it's like, you know, it takes a certain amount of courage to stand up and, you know, be brave enough to lead with this fierce fucking vulnerability. Um, because we've watched so many, you know, gurus and people that we admire, and so many people that paved the way and gave us the opportunity for us to lead with vulnerability, yet those leaders are few and far between. So I'm wondering, who is in your lineage and who's been in your path that was able to guide you in this vulnerability and fierceness?
Hmm. That's such a great question. It's funny because, you know, I have so many mentors and so many people who've taught me over the years, but actually the person that's coming to mind right now is my dad. So my dad is the pastor of a church, and it's an Indonesian church.
Mm.
And the interesting thing about his journey, and I guess relates to my journey, is that he only became a pastor when I was around 8 or 9 years old. So the first few years of life, like, we didn't even really go to church. My mum was a Catholic. And so, I don't know, my dad had this sudden awakening and he realized that that was his calling. He needed to go and do that. And we were
Mm.
just kind of expected to, like, now become this, you know, like I
Yeah.
was now a preacher's kid. And so that, like, was a huge turning point in my journey. And so I grew up in church. I got really devout, but just seeing him, because he was not, like, that just wasn't his personality. He was a party
Yeah.
boy, like he was a
Yeah.
sailor, and like that's what his background was. Then all of a sudden he kind of stepped into this role, and, you know, seeing his transformation as well, going from like just being my dad to now being the founder and the leader of this church, and stepping into his role as a preacher and guiding people and holding space for people. I saw all of the challenges that comes with, like, being, you know, the pastor of a church, which is people have expectations of you, people always need help, and you got to be there for them.
Mm.
um and so I've taken on a lot of, I guess, his archetype in that sense, but also it's colored with my own experiences of how that affected me, you know, as his kid,
Mm.
and having the pressure of having to be a certain thing. So a lot of what I stand for, in essence, is a rebellion against the things that
Yeah.
didn't resonate with me, but
Yeah.
still managing to integrate, like, the beautiful gifts that have been passed down to me, the ability to stand up in front of people and really fucking command space and really invoke spirit and really, you know, like, set the tone and the atmosphere of people being in congregation. But at the same
Mm.
time, what I stand for is not shut up and listen to me. This is what is right and what is wrong. It's actually, no, like, listen to yourself and
Yeah.
find for yourself what is true for you, and walk in the truth of that which is true to you. And so
Mm.
it's been this beautiful just integration of what I've got from my past and my background, including the wounding and the trauma and all that
Yeah.
shit, and then also my natural soul essence and my gifts.
Yeah, that's cool. And that's, now I know why this morning in meditation I had all these like thoughts just running through, and they were seemingly so random, but now I know why.
It's never random, huh?
Exactly. Okay, where do I want to start? So one thing that when you were talking about your dad just then, and constantly being there for other people, and people, I felt like people, you know, wanting so much of him and wanting advice and all of this, what did that teach you about boundaries?
Ha, that's so great. Um, it's a funny one. I got to say that I had a very, like, hard road with boundaries.
Yeah.
My mum and my dad are both extremely generous people. From the minute they got to Australia, they're both migrants. Our home has been home to so many people. So it's actually been rare in my life growing up that I had my own bedroom.
Yeah.
I was always sharing a bedroom with other people, at sometimes sharing a bed with like five, you know, it was like five of us women in a queen
Wow.
size bed going not long ways, but the other way. And we would
Yeah.
just sleep like sardines.
Wow.
So it gave me like this really strong sense of community and living in community, and I love that. It's a big part of who I am, and it's a high value for me. At the same time, I never really knew what it meant to like to have my own space and carve my own space. And so now that I'm older and I can understand how important that is to me, I do treasure privacy a lot. I do take a lot of time to myself. I can get very introverted, and I'm learning, and I have learned how to, because I think when a person first discovers their right to assert and communicate boundaries, it can almost go pendulum swing the other way, and they can be very forceful in the assertion of their boundaries.
Yeah.
And I've been on the, you know, the receiving end of that, and it hurts too. It's
Yeah.
unnecessarily
So
painful
true.
to, you know, to do that and to be
Yeah.
quite fiery. So
Yeah.
I've been that person. And for me now, what I try and do is remember that anything that I have can never be taken away from me. Like if it's really mine, then it can't be taken away from me. And so when it comes to my sovereignty, my autonomy, my spiritual freedom, no one can take that away from me. Even if my body's locked up or whatever people want to do to me, you can't take away who I am at my core. And that knowing gives me this kind of calm ability to be flexible and to be like bendy without feeling like people are walking all over me. I actually very rarely have that feeling anymore, that
Yeah.
people are taking from me or whatever. Like I feel that when I'm being generous and I'm giving, that's a value for me. So I don't want to be spiteful, and I don't want to like cut people out,
Yeah.
because then I'm betraying myself. But
Yeah.
that's taken a lot of time to come to that point, you know, to
Yeah.
just like shake off all of the fucking conditioning and the external value systems and just go, actually, I love being generous and I love helping others, and that
Yeah.
is who I am. And
Yeah.
if that means that I'm disrespecting myself in the process, then that's not being generous and kind and helpful to myself. So that's my
Yes.
barometer. But
Yeah.
I don't have to blast my boundaries from the rooftops, you know?
Yeah, I really love that. And I'm so grateful that you spoke to that, because that's been a real, like, to navigate that, I find really hard, you know, and I'm mindful of that is, you know, you have a community, you have this and that, and I don't want to, because I've been rejected in the past, and you know, people that have asserted their boundaries, and boundaries, like, you know, things that sometimes I've paid for, and then they've gone, oh no, you know, it's, you know, in mentoring or coaching, whatever, it's like, you know, you get this, and then halfway through it's like, no, sorry, we're not doing that anymore, you know.
Yeah, that shits me.
Yeah, so I feel like there's a real, you know, there's an on, and of course there's a light and shadow to everything, right? But um I'm really glad that you spoke to that part of honoring you. So what was that part like? So for the people who are navigating this for themselves, because I think anyone stepping into leadership,
Yeah,
you know, and that could be in any area of life, really, like with your parenting or like partners, like
yeah.
whoever, friends, how would you recommend that they can begin to go, okay, like, yeah, set up boundaries, but not so other people are feeling absolutely rejected and
Totally.
not heard, or respected, seen, whatever, but also honoring where they're at.
Yeah, for me, there's a few things to that. And I think really it comes down to skillful communication. What I see happens a lot, even for like high level coaches in our community, they're terrible communicators.
Yeah.
Like, and it's a shame because on one level, so they might be great at expressing, but there's a huge distinction between expression and communication. Expression is a one-way flow. So they'll stand up on the social media platform and express and express and express, and they become very bright and people are attracted to them. But actually their ability to receive communication from others, which is the communication flow, is a cycle, right? It's like I speak to you, you receive, and then you give back to me and I receive. And they can't, their ability to hold other people's communication is very small, and so they're not very good communicators. And I've been guilty of that myself, because we get kind of power drunk when you're up there and people are listening to you and giving you all their attention, and then you don't want to give them your attention because in your mind you're like this fucking shining, you know, star, and everyone's just a moth to your light, you know. I see that a lot. And then they cut communication lines, right? So it's like, you can't have access to me, and you can't have access to me, and you can't have access to me because I'm the most important and significant one. And for me, like, that's like, I've journeyed that, and I saw how it actually made my heart really closed. That's what happened for me. I felt like, great, now I'm protected in my fucking fortress of you can't communicate to me and I get to say whatever I want. And in the end, I couldn't feel myself. I lost my heart, you know. So I journey this cyclically. Like, I go through this over and over again because I do have a lot of fire, but actually at my core, like, the way I choose to live and the way I want to live is to be totally innocent. And that requires a lot of work to, like, pull down the heart walls that I build up. And it's always for protection, because it doesn't feel good to put a communication out, right? Like, say something really polarizing and bold, and then create this effect in people's inner world, whether they're triggered or they just have a different opinion. And then, like, you're one person, you say one thing, and then you've got like 100 people giving you arrows back, and it can feel fucking overwhelming, right?
Absolutely.
So I totally understand, like, the desire for a lot of influential people to want to cut, you know, to, like, it's like creating a fortress for themselves. But the result is then you actually reduce your vulnerability, and your vulnerability is your depth and your sensitivity, right? And your actual care and empathy for the people that you're serving. So for me, there's this beautiful, like, cycle that I journey where I keep coming back to, again, it's the humility piece, you know. It's like almost like the voice of God that's like, yeah, but are you doing this for you, or are you doing this to be of service? Because if you're doing this for you, all right, well, that's what you get. You get to be alone in the world if that's what you want. But if you really want to journey this fucking oneness journey, whatever it is that we talk about, well, you're going to have to open yourself up to being vulnerable. And you might interpret that as being hurt by others, but really it's frequencies of love that you get to alchemize and bring home.
Exactly, that's right. And I'm reading it's just refreshing. It just feels I'm reading Disappearance of the Universe at the moment, and
cool, that sounds like an amazing book.
It's epic. It's frying my brain, but it's friggin' epic. And, you know, he talks about how, you know, in communication there needs to be, you know, so they talk about how if no one's in the forest and the tree falls, does it actually make a sound? And so they talk about, and I was thinking of you actually when I was reading it. Sounds random, but I think because anyway, I'll just continue. And so they were talking about how, you know, how duality is a necessity, because in order for whatever waves, there has to be a receiver. Otherwise the sound does not exist. And this is where I was thinking of you, because I was thinking about your oneness and the waves that you put out into the universe, and how you perceive them through your music is where I was
Awesome.
thinking of you. But that's what come to mind when you're just speaking, right? Is because I love that, you know, we can express, and expression is important, but you know, and again, communication, where you're talking about community before and growing up. And that's, you know, for me, community, I see it as common unity
Yeah,
and
beautiful.
makes that community. And I see that as, you know, yeah, it feels really important to me as well to actually, you know, have that giver and receiver. You know, it feels
Yeah,
more whole for me rather than just spruiking. That
that's
doesn't
it.
feel good to me.
Well, it's a two-terminal universe, as in, like, if we didn't have the receipt point that you talked about earlier,
Mm,
then, like, we feel on some level, and this is what I think, like, is one of the core wounds of human beings, is that we don't feel real until
yeah,
another person receives and validates us and reflects
yeah,
us back to ourselves, right? Because
yeah,
it's this holographic world. And so we're all kind of like emitting these, like, you know, like projections of reality,
yeah,
and we don't have any way to know whether it's real or not unless someone affirms it and
yeah,
validates us and acknowledges us, which
yeah.
is also one of the key aspects of communication that I feel gets so overlooked.
Mm,
And people get, and it creates all sorts of havoc in relationships. It's just like the lack of acknowledgement. People
yeah.
don't know how to acknowledge each other, and so you have
Mm,
all this communication. Like, okay, here's a really interesting personal story, and, like, I know I've been this person to so many people,
yeah.
but, like, recognizing when you, okay, there's so many things to this, and I'm so passionate about it because I'm journeying it at the moment, right?
Oh,
When you don't feel real
yeah,
in the world, when you don't feel significant,
yeah,
it is it is the seed of so many problems in relationships,
yeah,
because you don't recognize the weight that you hold in other people's universe. And
yeah,
so, because you don't recognize the weight that you hold, when somebody reaches out to you, or you know, wants you to be a certain thing, for you it's like a small thing. It's like, oh, I'm not going to come to your party, or no, I'm not going to reply to your message, or I'm not going to do this thing, right? And then, because of the weight that you hold in that person's world, it creates this pain and this wound, right? But you're oblivious, you're like aloof and oblivious, and you think, like, I don't understand why you're so upset, like, it's just me,
yeah,
I'm not anyone special or important to you, right?
yeah,
And this is what happens all over the world. No one understands their specialness and their significance and the weight that they hold in the world and in other people's world. And so a small thing that happens is, you know, you send a message to someone because you've just read their book. Oh my God, I just read your book and it touched me, and, like, or listen to your podcast, and that you know, in this section here when you said this, it was just like changed my life. Thank you so much.
yeah,
And you, this important person, don't realize the specialness and the significance that you have in this person's world now. You just ignore their message.
yeah,
And sure, it's that person's responsibility to deal with the
yeah,
upset that they've got, but it hurts, you know? And it's like, you've got all these people who don't feel real, right?
yes,
Because as a result, you haven't acknowledged their communication. So now they don't feel real. They put this
yeah,
expression out. You didn't acknowledge it. You didn't reflect it back. And then people are literally walking around like ghosts. We don't feel real because our communication doesn't get acknowledged and come back.
yeah.
So that's my little rant.
Oh, I love it, AlphaMama. You.
I'm so passionate about this because I remember when I had that realization, I cried when I realized, like,
Mm,
how my lack of communication skills, my inability to acknowledge people, my fans, like anyone who reaches out, like, it's creating real problems in the world. People
yeah,
don't feel met, people don't feel heard, people don't feel seen, people don't feel felt. And
yeah,
I know what that feels like. You know, we
yeah,
all know what that feels like. So why do we then want to become
yeah,
like the trigger for somebody else's
yeah.
wound?
That's right. And that's, oh, so how then do you dance with, you know, sometimes it's impossible to acknowledge everybody, or, you know, without, you know, kind of being online 24/7.
Totally.
Um, and then there's, so what sorry, I'm just going to have to try and make sense of this.
Mm,
So there's kind of that, what I'm feeling. So there's that you in that, but then there's also a responsibility of that constantly seeking external validation and affirmation and confirmation as well. And then having that self-awareness and responsibility that it's that self-acknowledgement that actually ultimately matters.
Yeah.
How do we, I guess, honor each one? And then surely there has to be an integration there as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, you know, that's a big piece as well, right?
Yeah.
When we can't expect others to give us the things that are going to make us feel good, and that is just a fact. But if they do, we got to acknowledge that it feels really good, you know, and it's really nice because we do
Yes.
live in you know, in the world with other people. At the same time, I think that is also like the mark of someone who takes responsibility for their internal world, you know, and who recognizes, okay, like, yes, I get to, so, you know, emotions are self-generated, right?
Mm,
Like
mm,
I can't give you an emotion, but I can create the scene and give you elements and the recipe for you to create your emotional experience. I can do that.
yeah.
But when we know that emotions are a self-generated experience, then we can use that to our advantage, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, this for me is the path of self-love, and it's the path of self-mastery, right? When we can recognize that anything that I could ever feel is actually not outside of me, it's inside of me, right? And
Yeah.
so if I know that, it actually doesn't fucking matter where I am. Like,
Yeah.
I could be on a fucking cliff face, or I could be in a jail cell, or I could be on a fucking crucifix. I could be anywhere. But if I know that my emotional experience is a result of, like, it's a self-generated experience, then I can have any fucking experience I want.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's easier said than done.
Yeah. Much.
Yeah, right. It's like, how the fuck do we do that? And that, I
Yeah.
think that's part of the journey that we're on.
Yeah.
And, you know, being able to interpret things, like interpretation, um, and overlaying significance and making meaning and writing stories is
Mm,
like it's a natural part of human beings and what we do, right? So
yeah.
you could have the same experience as someone else, but the way that they interpret it and the feelings that it generates within them and how they then, you know, what they do with it, how they alchemize it, can be completely different. And so,
So different.
yeah, for me, it's just the art of, like, what meaning are you making out of this experience, and what are you going to let it do to you inside?
And that's just sound right there, isn't it? You know, and that's something else. I was thinking about that this morning too, is just, you know, my dance with this, and, you know, constantly asking that question of what's this going to mean for you,
Yeah.
and seeing that, you know, the same thing can happen to two people, and one can go down one way and one can go down the other way and
Yeah.
have completely different experiences. And the ripple on effect of that within generations is huge.
Yeah.
So I think that's something, that anchor, if we can just come home to that, right?
Yeah.
Like, all the time, and use that as an anchor and as a little, you know, check-in point.
Yeah.
I think it'll serve us well.
Yeah, there's so much to it, and it's like, you know, the unfolding of reality. Like, I see reality as a manifestation of individual cause points, if you will, like
Yeah,
intention, right? Like, everybody has their intentions, and not just one intention. It's like every single fucking moment there's an intention, whether you're conscious of it or not. And these threads, right, that are just being woven all the time, and then they might get intercepted at some point by someone else's intention. So you've got all these threads, and then one cuts across and one cuts across, and then it's being woven. And there's intentions that you made, like when you were 2 years old or lifetimes ago, that are, they're in motion, they're in perpetual motion, because our reality is like constantly unfolding. And it's, you can see that as chaos,
yeah,
or when you take the God's eye view, you can see that as this fucking amazing tapestry that we're all weaving together,
yeah,
and we can influence it. You know, if we allow ourselves to have a bit of space and remember that you're not just a fucking thread, it's not all here, but if you give
yeah,
yourself some space, we can influence this tapestry that we're weaving together. And I think that is the difference between empowered people and disempowered people. When
yeah.
you don't feel that you can influence the reality that you're experiencing, you're going to feel disempowered, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's it. And just then, like, there's that, I'm like, yes. But then and that's the reality piece of the leaders, right? is because they're not realizing that the reality that they set in motion as well, that just kind of sunk in for me there a little bit further. But there was something in there that I wanted to touch base on and delve into more. The tapestry, the zooming out. I can't, it'll come back if it's meant to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm glad, because, that's right. So is that then, and you just speak of it so poetically and so beautifully. So I just want to honor that too. You spoke about, and well, I say zooming out. You didn't say zooming out. I say zooming out, So then you speak about the intervention. Is it all divine intervention?
Well, I mean, like, it would depend on what your understanding of what the divine is, I guess. It's part of why I created Church of the Goddess, is because I grew up with a definition of God that was, he was a separate entity to us, and he is this Lord who rules us, and it's quite confusing for me because feeling very separate from the divine, and then your whole life is an effort to scramble your way out of this deep unworthiness so that you can finally be received back, right? Whereas now my definition of the divine, or God, source, whatever you want to call it, is constantly evolving, because I refuse to define God by one definition that serves forever, because I feel like it's alive and it's evolving, and my experience of divine is evolving. So currently, at this moment, what I believe is that we cannot be separate from anything that's come before us if we are a product of it, right? It's like that's why there's ancestor worship and things like that, because we recognize that we are a product of all of that, and so therefore we are our ancestors. And so if you see God as the creator of all things, well then we are that, we are part of that, we've come from that, and so therefore we must carry the blueprint or the essence or whatever of the divine. And if creation was birthed out of nothingness, then that means we are also nothingness, we carry all of it, but we're a particular unique manifestation. So sometimes when people talk about oneness, there's this idea that we're all the same, and I don't believe that. I don't think we're all the same. And I think it's quite obvious that we're not all the same.
Yes, exactly.
At the same time, there is something within us there's something within us that is, if you trace it back far enough, it has the same origination point. And I think that origination point is what you can call God or creation or whatever. And I think because we carry that within us, therefore we are divine, or there's an aspect to us that is divine, if you will, or maybe it's all of us, like depending on how you look at separation. And then we can intervene, we can influence. But it depends, here's the distinction for me. It's where are you influencing from? What part, if we're this conglomerate of parts as a human, are you influencing from your, from your reactive childhood wounds? Because that can happen. Are you asserting your will from your conditioned, values and all of that stuff? Or are you operating from your divine nature, which if we ever can fully step into our divine nature, our whole fucking concept of what's supposed to happen and what's not supposed to happen is going to be completely blown out of the water, right? So this is the fun part of being a human, is just being able to constantly have new layers of self unravel. That was so fucking weird.
No, it's perfect, because I was going to ask you about it, actually, especially now knowing that your dad was a priest, and my unfolding is very much the same, and I find it fascinating. I love to talk about this because it's, I don't know, it's just it's amazing. yeah, I always say oneness is not the same as sameness. They're
Yes.
two very different things, and I agree. A lot of people get them confused, um, and I think that we're so hell bent on disrupting the status quo, but we forget that we are the status quo.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
that dance and that paradox,
Absolutely.
of all of it. I'm curious to ask you, what is your father was a preacher?
He's still a
Still,
pastor of it. It's an
yeah,
Indonesian
pastor.
congregation, a
So,
Pentecostal church.
so is that, like, what religion is that?
So Pentecostal is, I guess, well, the best way to describe it is like they speak in tongues, and they clap their hands, and they get filled with the Holy Spirit. So it's very, like, it's quite a dramatic flavor of Christianity, if you will.
Cool. So Christianity. Now I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and particularly this morning. So,
Mm-hmm.
mm, my mum was so not religious. She
Mm-hmm.
put religion in the same category as politics, and they're all full of shit and they just out for your money, is what my
Mm-hmm.
mum would have said.
Yeah.
um and so it left me with this blank canvas of
Yeah.
so, and but very curious. And so I want to ask you about, there's so much of Christianity that feels really good, you know
Mm-hmm.
um but there's so much of it that I hear that feel, and this is just my own projection, I guess, and understanding, is it feels very patriarchal
Mm-hmm.
and almost made up to serve the patriarch.
Totally. Yeah.
um what is your understanding of that, and what's been your dance with that, from having your history and past with your father to now? I'm curious to learn more.
Yeah, so I mean, that's definitely, like, true, factually. If you do your historical research, you will see
Mm,
that there have been, pivotal moments in the timeline of Christianity where it's the teachings of Jesus Christ has been usurped by, political agendas, and definitely, like, the Bible has been changed, and lots of things have happened,
yeah,
and femininity has been totally warped and, like,
yeah,
subjugated, and all sorts of stuff has happened.
yeah,
And for me growing up, I would have these moments where I'd come up against something and I'd be like, that doesn't feel true. And I
yeah,
would ask a question, and then I would get told some answer that didn't resonate as truth for me.
yeah,
And then I'd be like, I don't feel satisfied with that answer. And then I would ask more, and eventually it would be like, well, this is just what it is.
yeah,
Like, you can't, if if it doesn't make sense to you, then that's where you have to exercise faith. And that was where I'd call
yeah,
bullshit. I'd be like, well, that just doesn't fucking resonate for me.
yeah,
If it doesn't make sense to me on here and in here and
yes,
then I can't just blindly believe it. I tried
yes,
to. I tried
yes,
to for many many years.
yeah,
And what I think the difference is when it comes to religion is some people choose religion because it gives them a sense of certainty and stability.
yeah,
And I think when you choose religion for a sense of certainty and stability, you enter into a fixedness, like a dogmatic
mm,
belief system that makes you feel safe, which is
yeah,
great, but actually it doesn't allow for evolution, which is what
yes,
we're naturally inclined to do.
yes,
Some people, and this is, I put myself in this category because I personally love religion, and for this
yeah,
reason is because I go to religion to find an experience of God. That's what I'm looking
yes,
for. So you
yes,
can put me in a mosque, you can put me in a temple, you can
yeah,
put me in a church, you put me in a cave, you can put me anywhere. And because I'm looking for an experience of God, I will have an experience of God. And
yes,
so for me, like, the reason why I still love Christianity, and I love all religions, is
yeah,
because my experience was I got to have experiences of God, and
yeah,
that were true for me. And no
yeah,
one, like, you can try and tell me what God is, but it doesn't actually fucking matter until I have my own felt experience of
yes,
God. And
yes,
so it's funny, like, I remember So my world of spirituality, my journey is pretty interesting. It all came through boyfriends. It's the funniest thing, right? So my first boyfriend, like proper boyfriend, I had other like stupid boyfriends, but they didn't really count. I was 15 and I met this guy and he was a Catholic. So already off the bat, there's a slight difference, even though Catholicism is technically also Christianity.
Yeah.
But because there was that difference, my dad was very like, no, this is not, you're not allowed
Yeah.
to date him, blah, he's a Catholic, blah, blah, blah. And so I learned some of, his flavor of Catholicism. And I was like,
Mm.
okay, cool. Yeah, a bit different, but also a bit the same. Like,
Yeah.
get it. Then I had a boyfriend who was a Taoist and a Buddhist. So in Indonesia, he was an Indonesian guy.
Yeah.
Basically, like all of the Chinese heritage people of Indonesia, because they only recognize 5 religions. It's like Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Judaism. That's
Yeah.
all you're allowed to choose.
Yeah.
And so if you're a Taoist or if you're a Confucianist or whatever and you're Chinese, you get lumped into the Buddhism category,
Right.
regardless of what you believe.
Yeah.
So they kind of developed this mash of like a belief system as the Chinese, of like it's half Confucianism, half Taoism, half Buddhism, like whatever. It's just a mash. So
Yeah.
he was one of these people. And he told me that for him, the only thing he really believes in is Kuan Yin. And the reason why he believes in Kuan Yin is because he had a really bad car accident and he was supposed to die, but he didn't die because there was a tiny statue of Kuan Yin in his car.
Wow.
So that showed me 2 things. It showed me that we will hold onto the things that we directly experience as truth,
Yeah.
right? Because you could interpret that same car accident any different way, but for him it meant Kuan Yin saved me.
Yeah.
And so that was like another introduction into, okay, well maybe something else can be true, that because according to my belief system that would have been total bullshit and not true, and that's like false gods and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So it was that boyfriend. Then I dated this guy for 6 years who was a Muslim, an Indonesian Muslim guy, but his particular flavor of Islam was like mystic. It was kind of like a mystical Sufism mixed with like some other things, and he had this particular meditation, and they had this whole philosophy that you got to die before you die, so that when you die you know where to go back to source, and like you can travel like as like astral travel, like a whole bunch of cool shit. And I remember dating him, and he gave me this piece that collapsed all my fucking paradigms. And I had like an identity death for the first time, and I was 17.
Wow.
He said to me, you know that God is not a person in the sky, yeah? And I was like, yeah, like I know that technically. And he was like, yeah, but God is in every single part of its creation. Like it's an essence, in everything. And I was like, my brain couldn't quite handle that information, but I knew on a body level it was true, because it was like everything was like reshuffling, and I felt so upset because I wanted to fight him, and I wanted to fight the truth of that, because I wanted to hold on to what made me feel secure and certain and safe. And I remember like having this conversation with him, and I knew what he was saying was true, but it was so hard. So I ran to church, and like I like dived under a pew, and I just fucking bawled my eyes out. I just bawled my eyes out, because I felt like if I believe this, if I adopt this as a belief, it's going to change everything. And it's going to make me wrong for the whole, like the past, everything that I believed is going to make that wrong. And that was really hard to let go of.
Yeah.
But it was the pivotal moment that allowed me to open up, and to open up my mind to be flexible with like changing my beliefs. Because as I become aware of new information, if that resonates as truth, then I'm going to have to be flexible, and that was the thing that fucking changed the game for me. That moment, I remember like the death, and feeling like it's going to mean that like I'm out of favor with my dad, it's going to mean that I'm out of favor with the church, it's going to mean that, and it's like everything that came with it was so overwhelming and terrifying. But it was the ultimate liberation for me.
I'm reminded of the law of truth in the Hermetic laws, and that's as soon as you have to defend your truth, it's no longer your truth. And I carry that with me for those times, and I'm like, like it keeps me feeling fluid in my thinking and how I feel. There was also a feeling that popped up there, like for me, being that you've had this journey with religion and God, has the fear ever come up that you will get shunned from the tribe?
Oh, 100 fucking million times. So many times. Like, I'm still journeying that to this day. Like, it is tough for me. Yeah. I mean, and it happens in many ways, like especially with Church of the Goddess. Like, I fucking fought that like a motherfucker. I was like, nah, not doing it. Nah, no way. Can't step into this like role, this archetype. Can't do it. On the one hand, because to my dad and everyone in his church, it's completely blasphemous. It's like, you can't do this. That's like just straight up wrong. And then at the same time, the whole adopting of the church and, you know, and stepping into this kind of like religious sort of sphere, people have so many triggers around that already. Like, I remember the first time I said it, I remember Dane was like, oh, just the whole church thing is just gross, you know, and the whole goddess thing. And like other people in our community that I really respect and admire and look up to are still eked out by the concept of church. And I get that, you know, and like, I don't think anybody really ever wants to. When you said like not afraid to ruffle feathers in my intro, I was like, that's so funny that you say that, because I don't like it. You know? I don't like to ruffle feathers. I hate it when people get upset at the things I say, and I hate it when I upset people, and I hate it when I hurt people. I don't want to be that person. But I can't help it. It's just part of my fucking nature. Like,
it's
I'm
inevitable, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it's the dance of like, I don't want to piss people off just for the sake of pissing people off. Like, no. At the same time, like, who am I to stop myself from bringing through something that needs to fucking be here? And if people resonate with it, then it's for them, and if they don't resonate for them, then it's not for them. But I can't not bring through something that is potentially going to fucking totally change someone's world positively, just because I'm afraid of the people who aren't going to resonate, you know. And that's a hard one to learn.
It is hard, and it's a constant dance with that, I find. You know, it's, you push the edge, you get comfy with that edge, and then you push yourself out a little bit, and it's just constant dance. And I recognize it because it's my dance as well. It's just, you know, it's been mine. No, there was something I wanted to ask you. Is there a difference, or what is the difference between religion and spirituality?
For me, religion is a system. It's a system that is designed to like, I see them as vastly different. Firstly, I love systems, and that's why I love religion, because it's a way, right? It's like a way. It's like a series of paths that you get to walk through, and the idea behind it is that if you walk this path correctly, then you will get to, you know, the treasure at the end, which is like God coming home. But the problem is where people go into the path of religion, the system, and then they think that the system is it. Right? They think, okay, well, now I'm in the system, so therefore, like, I'm doing the right thing, and I'm in the system now. And when you like get stuck to the system, then you become very susceptible to manipulation, because if you can manipulate the system, then you can manipulate the person, right? Whereas for me, spirituality is, you don't fucking have to do anything. You don't have to try. You don't have to believe. Like, my personal understanding of spirituality is just like, as is who you are. It's just like, even if you don't think you're spiritual, cool. If a person doesn't identify with being spiritual, that's fine. I'm not going to fight them, but I'm still going to see the divine in them. I'm
Yeah.
still going to acknowledge, well, I'm sorry that like, I'm not going to fight you on it, but
Yeah.
I'm going to see you as that, because it's what I feel. It's what
Yeah.
I experience, is that every single person has an aspect to them that is fucking so much greater than their understanding of who
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah.
And there's that aspect that the essence of them is spiritual in nature.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
for all the fucking culture around spirituality, I don't really give a fuck about that. For
Yeah.
me, spirituality to me means, how can I continue experiencing life? Oh, this is a really great challenge for me to like fully articulate this. For me, it's like, how can I live my life honoring that I'm more than just this body? You
Mm.
know, that I'm more than just a single individual flesh and bone,
Yeah.
like meat bag.
Yeah.
And my understanding of what is beyond this body is what I feel my spirituality is. It's like the continual expansion of my awareness of all that I am.
Yeah.
That is not just this individual fucking meat body. All that I am is going to expand out to include, well, I'm part of a family, I'm part of a tribe, I'm part of a world, I'm part of a universe, who knows what goes beyond this fucking universe. You know,
Yeah.
maybe there's like more universes,
Yeah.
but I don't know that right now. But
Yeah.
I get a sense that the deeper I travel into myself, the more that I can become aware of. And that's really all it is, just awareness expanding.
Yeah. So the Church of the Goddess, is it a religion or a spirituality, a form of spirituality, or is it the fusion of both?
I guess like in some ways it's the fusion of both. I don't think that I'm going to fucking save the world. Like I kind of, you know, dealt with a lot of my God delusions. At the same time, it's something that's journeying me. It's something that wants to birth through me. So recently I changed the church and put an X instead of a U, and
Yes.
I changed the E
Yeah.
and put an X instead of,
Yes.
and the reason is because I don't want to feminize it. Like, it's not really, a lot of women resonate with it because there's this whole returning to like feminine and feminine rising and all that stuff, which I fucking love. It's great. You know, I had my feminine awakening and it was beautiful.
Yeah.
But I don't think that there is a gender when it comes to divinity. I really don't. And
Mm.
so therefore the X is ambiguity. It's
Yeah.
space for you to define it.
Yeah.
However the fuck it looks like, it feels like you, that's your experience. I'm not here to tell you what God is.
Yes.
But what I feel my job is, and what I feel Church of the Goddess is we create a space. We
Yeah.
hold space. We curate it with aesthetics, music, because my language is aesthetics, right? This is what I do. I use music, I use art, I use language, I use poetry, I use sound waves, I use dance, like all of the things that I have to create a space for you where you can go and meet God yourself.
Yeah.
And if you find it in a single note, if you find it in a song, if you find it in your fucking pinky, like awesome, I fucking celebrate that. You don't have to find it in what I say or my book or blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
I'm just going to hold the space.
Mm. So, okay, I wanted to ask you about what is the, I mean, you know, because you're an artist and music, and you do so much in that realm. What part does that play for you?
Music, you mean
Yeah,
specifically?
yeah,
Oh, that's such like a huge question. Like I, there's so many ways I could answer this, but for me, like the simplest one is music is wavelengths, like it's sonic waves, right?
mm,
And you know, we're dealing with like denseness, right? Like the issue with human consciousness is
mm,
that we're dense, right?
mm,
We're physical, we're matter. Like
yeah,
so how do we cut through, how do we cut through that density? How do we cut through that solidness, the mass? Like when a
mm,
person is upset, when they're grieving, or when they're in like deep shit, you can see it, right? There's like a
yeah,
cloud around their head.
yeah,
It's like you can't touch it, and you can't like get through like the solidness.
yeah,
So for me, music is like waves that can go through, they can go through that solidness, and they can like, you can use sound and it's because it's your particular frequency, like you're coding it with your intention, right? So if
Mm.
your intention is just to make a nice song, cool, that's what you've
Yeah.
made. But if your intention is to penetrate into a person's world and to create something beautiful for them, then that like you've just coded your sound, your music with that intention. So it's going to cause an effect in people's world if they're open and receptive to it. So
Yeah.
for me, like music is a medicine that is just so powerful. It's aesthetics, it's art, it's like, it's this fucking nebulous abstract tool that we have
Yeah.
that can do so much in the realm that we don't consciously understand, and
Mhm.
yet we're already doing it, and we've been doing it since the fucking
Yeah,
beginning of time, you know.
exactly.
So for me, I see it as more powerful than Western medicine, more powerful than fucking herbal medicine. It's like, it's fucking like magic. You can't see it, and yet it can create such a profound effect. So I just think it's
Yeah,
just the ultimate.
that's right. And that's what I just got a sense of, is like it's your and that's what, I was thinking today when I was thinking about you, like music, it's, for me, the word sound waves kept on coming to mind when I was thinking about what you do. And now I know why, is because I just had this sense of, it's a wave, so therefore it's thus just energy, and able to be omnipresent at all times, and able to penetrate anywhere, anytime, into
That's
any
it.
body.
That's it.
um which is such a privilege to be able to do that, and the sense of then being benevolent in that becoming even more important for the receiver, um as well as the giver. So
Yes, that's a big part. So I want to speak to that because I've been passionate about that for a long time, which is why I assembled God Queen, which is this,
mm,
this music collective of female artists
yeah,
whose music is here not just to entertain, but whose music is here to like change you and alchemize you,
yeah,
and like I'm very passionate about that because you can just fucking write a song. Anybody can do that.
yeah,
And our radio and our entertainment channels are full of songs who actually at its purpose level is to distract us, is to
yeah,
take our focus away from some of the crazy shit that's happening in the world. And I've
yeah.
written a song about this. If you want to check it out, it's called Us in the Front.
Cool.
But we have the power as artists to
Yeah,
influence on a fucking cellular level, on an unconscious level, right? That's what music does. It
yeah,
works in the unconscious and the hidden realms. And because we have that power, if we also have the intention, then we can actually do so much fucking awesome shit for
yeah.
humanity. And that's where I'm heading toward. And that's why the women that I work with, they're mystics, they're musicians and they're mystics.
That's so, and I really admire that, and I think it's such a gift. It's such a gift to this world, and I feel it in my heart, and I just feel really grateful for the work that you do. Um, I I'm just I used to work on cruise liners like 20 years ago, and I met someone once who was cruising, and she was a music therapist, and I was like, what the fuck is a music therapist? Like, what is it?
Mm.
20 years ago, like, was
That's cool.
totally
Yeah.
unheard of. And she said, I heal people through music because sound has such a powerful effect, and that can work for us or against us, but we're also traumatized by songs
Yes.
as well. So her therapy was healing through music. So for me, I mean, I was only 20, 21 at the time. Um, and so, but it landed, and I
Yeah.
got it, and so I really, that it's such a, it's magical, and the power of it, I think, is really huge.
Absolutely.
Um,
And also I want to say one thing on that for anyone who might be listening. If you want to use music for healing or like, for changing things, it doesn't also have to be like, meditation music with sound bowls and gongs. Like that's cool. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's beautiful, but it
yeah,
doesn't have to be like that.
yeah,
It's really very simple. It's just intention. That's all it is. If your intention is to create a positive effect in someone's world, then that's already going to go into your music. It doesn't have to be fucking layers of like, it doesn't have to be that shit.
exactly, and that's it, and that's, yeah. Mm-hmm. I put a call out yesterday, you know, asking about people's Sunday morning tunes. And that just, I was like, wow, that was amazing. You know, someone was like, Welcome to the Jungle. And
Yeah.
another one was like Black Sabbath, Iron Man.
Yeah.
Another one was, I really liked your song, actually, the one that I can't remember what it was called now. But
It's
yeah,
called Toast.
I really loved that. And so but it was amazing, right? Because it's like there's no right or wrong. It's purely intention.
Yes.
What does, because I know pleasure plays a massive part in everything that you do, what role does it play and why is it so important?
Oh, it's huge for me. Pleasure is survival. You know, it's like a very simple equation, right? We are wired to chase pleasure and avoid pain, because pain is death and survival is pleasure. So for me, like, in a world where like so much of our pleasure has been stripped from us and sold back to us in like diluted, like concentrated, warped, distorted forms. That is what happens, right? It's like, oh, sex is bad, however we're going to use sex to sell you this thing and you can feel more sexy. It's like so fucking bullshit and so warped. For me, like, the reclamation of what I feel is pleasurable, like that is like the biggest fuck you to any system of suppression or oppression. It's like, no, my pleasure is important, it's prioritized, it's vital, and it's mine, and you fucking can't sell it back to me with your bullshit, you know? So that's why for me it's just fucking so, especially as a Christian girl, you know, coming up where it's like there's so much shame around it. I've really had to fight a lot to break myself free of those confines and just fully claim it as my fucking birthright. I get to feel good in this body.
And you know what I just realized for the first time? And I've been talking about pleasure and hedonism for fucking years, and and I just got it. Is it, and maybe it's not, but it just dropped in, so I'll speak to it. Is it the only feeling state that is both survival but also one of the highest frequencies at the same time?
It's quite possible. I mean, I link it a lot to art and aesthetics, right? Because what's pleasurable for you might be completely not pleasurable for me, which is like the beautiful thing. So it's like, it's a frequency that you experience in your own personal world, right? And I have no fucking clue what that feels like for you, but it's yours, and it's, you're feeling uplifted, you're feeling open. It's a way that you get to commune with the divine. Absolutely. That's, to me, that's what art is as well.
And it's available at every single layer of our consciousness.
Yes, that's
it's
true.
Available at every level. Well, fuck me, I've never realized that before. There you go.
That's great. Yes.
I've spoken about it as, you know, and read about it as, you know, like, as, you know, often in survival, it's the shadow side of pleasure that we hear about. And it's also the highest possible frequency that, you know, we can experience. Yeah, there you go.
It's beautiful.
Thank you for that unraveling. Oh, all right.
I love watching you at your pleasure. It's beautiful.
Just got a tickle in my special place.
Hell yes.
We have to wrap up, but I've just got one final question. And that is, what is turning you on at the moment, beautiful?
Right now it's just the idea of creating music and collaboration. It's always the same for me, just making art with people. Like, I love that so much. I have an event this coming Saturday online, obviously. It's a Church of the Goddess event, and the theme is finding freedom within. So that'll be music, and it'll be really beautiful, musically, sonically, artistically. There'll be a lot of truth spoken, and that's, you know, like, all I want to do is create experiences for people to find God. That's it. It's fucking simple for me.
Oh, AlphaMama, you have my heart. I feel really fucking grateful.
Thank you.
I feel moved, and I could just cry because I just want you to know, like, just how unique you are, and just your soul is just beautiful. And the last hour, like, it's just amazing. It's just what you do and who you are. Just thank you. And I fucking love everything that you're doing. And now I know why I've been leaning in to you. And sometimes that's intimidating. And I go, oh my goodness, I do feel that. I feel intimidated by you. But now I know why, is because just your holiness is just beautiful. So thank you so much for being on the show and sharing everything. It's just been, you spoke to so much so openly.
Thank you.
Just thank you.
Thank you. I just really want to acknowledge that. It was such a beautiful acknowledgement as well. It means a lot to me. And, you know, I've done a few interviews with different people, and some people, I'm not going to talk about them, but you specifically, like your questions and your ability to really listen and to be able to track, you know, on all the levels, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, all of it has just been so lovely, and has, yeah, you hold such a beautiful space for me to be able to just, you know, say the things as they want to come through. And so I really appreciate what you're doing and the space that you hold. And yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This is just, it's just been amazing. So thank you to everybody who's watched and will continue to watch. But thank you, beautiful woman.
Much love. What a fucking joy.
Woohoo!